Hey everybody, I just wanted to give everyone a second to join. If you want to let me know if you can hear me, feel free to drop it in the chat. By the way, I'm going to let you know what's going on for this webinar, but I'm actually going to wait to take questions a little bit more till the end because hopefully I'll cover a lot of the questions you may have, but also I've got a lot of information that I do want to cover, and so we'll save that for the end. And by the way, I also have an Ask Me Anything webinar later on. It's at 6 o'clock today. And so if you would like to join me for that webinar, any questions that I don't get to, I would be more than happy to answer then. I've devoted an entire hour just for answering those questions. So let's make sure that everyone's good to go. Again, I'm just going to wait a minute and make sure the audio is working okay and give people a moment. People can hear me okay? See?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay.
I'm gonna get off of this, see if it helps the video quality.
Okay, great. Okay, guys, thank you so much for your patience and thank you for joining me. What we're going to talk about today is something that I think we all need to talk about a lot right now. We need to talk about the future and talk about strategy. If you are like me, you probably ran into the same situation, which was that, everything canceled. Everything canceled all at once. All my jobs, all my photo shoots, commercial work, portraits, speaking jobs, like everything just vanished. And so, I mean, if you're like me, maybe you spent a couple days sulking, but then I realized that this is a time to take advantage. There's a lot of things that I need to do for strategy for my business that it often gets pushed to the back, and now is the time to do it. And so this presentation is all about embracing your time to strategize. And I want to take you through what I'm thinking and some of the things I've started to do for myself. I have been very productive the last couple of days after I, binge watched some bad TV, give myself some time to relax. And this next week, I am just going to absolutely fill it with strategy and planning for the future. It's really important to focus on not what you've lost, but the opportunities that you have in the future. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, yay, everything's wonderful. I know that people are struggling and that there are difficult times, but now is the time to crush that stress, crush that productivity, or crush that boredom with productivity and with things that are going to move us ahead. So let's actually jump right into that. Okay, so guys, first of all, I want to thank Adorama for inviting me to speak on this topic that we so need at this moment. And it's actually part of a project that they're doing, which is a hashtag called Create No Matter What. The idea is that, there are circumstances or things that may be holding us back, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be creating. And creating can take different forms. It can be in the form of producing work, but if you're like me who needs hair, makeup, wardrobe models, maybe you start photographing still life, or maybe your creation is in the form of strategy and it's in the form of moving your business ahead. And so that's actually what we're going to talk about right now. So here's what I've found. Typically, what ends up happening is that most photographers begin our careers by accident, right? So especially if you're a professional or an aspiring professional, maybe you do portraiture, maybe you do weddings, and someone said, hey, by the way, can you photograph my son's graduation? Can you photograph some engagement portraits? And it usually starts off as a favor. It's not really planned out. And then you figure out like, hey, I really like this. I enjoy this. The big problem though is that we stay on this course of accidental decision making. We just kind of move forward on accident. And that means that there's no strategy, there's no plans for the future. And that means that we're wasting a lot of time and we're not moving ahead for growth. So really what ends up happening, and this is what happened to me, is I started off where I'd shoot anything, which meant that as my career developed, I was shooting things I didn't enjoy, things that didn't inspire me, things that I wasn't even good at. I was definitely not making enough money. I wasn't charging the correct amount, and I didn't have a strategy for success. So guess what? In this downtime, If any one of these things you are struggling from, not shooting what you enjoy, not charging enough, not having a strategy for success, now is your opportunity. Now is the time to go ahead and take this opportunity to strategize. So I'm going to show you how to do this and exactly the approach that I am taking now, but also the approach that I've taken in the past to help me move forward and get to where I am now and hopefully to continue to grow. So here's what I want us all to do. And it sounds corny, but I want you to kind of pledge to yourself that you're going to take this time to reflect, look at what you're doing, figure out what you're doing right, figure out what you could be doing better, and strategize. That's what you need to be doing right now. Now, just to give you an idea, this is actually where I started off. There's nothing wrong with these photos. I took babies photographs and I did high school senior portraits. And I didn't dislike the work, but it was definitely not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be photographing something more creative, more inspiring. And I could have evolved my work in many different ways. And this is actually where I ended up now. So today I live and work in New York City. Currently, I'm actually out in the country for this webinar. But the type of work that I get paid to do now is that I'm shooting commercial work, makeup ads, skincare ads, hair campaigns, shoot campaigns for Canon. It's a mix of creating beautiful images of beautiful people and beautiful places with beautiful styling. And it's something that I'm super passionate about. So I want to show you where I started, just so you know that I didn't start off in New York City shooting fashion and beauty. That's not the case at all. The picture, the order form you see on the left is what my first portrait order form looked like in 2006. And I'd actually started my business earlier than that, but I was doing it all wrong. And I was actually just kind of making up my prices on the go. Don't do that, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And so for my portrait order form, my very first package was the entire session and retouching with 1 8x10, 2 5x7s, and 4 wallets for $59 US. As you can see, that would not at all be a sustainable way to approach my business. Now, to give you an idea of where I'm at now, my beginning packages are now somewhere between $3,200 and $3,600. This does not mean I'm saying like, hey guys, look how much money I make. Like that's not the case at all. I'm just showing you the change over 10 years. In the first order form, I didn't have strategy and I didn't know my value. In the second, I had very carefully planned business strategy and I absolutely establish what my value is, communicate that, and only try to attract people that understand that value. I'm never trying to convince people that to hire me at this price point if they can't afford it or if they don't think it's worth it. I'm trying to attract people that want what I have to offer. So let's talk about this. Where we need to start here is that we need to start with being deliberate, both for our business and our creativity. I'm going to talk about that. We need to find a style. You need to value yourself, which I just mentioned a moment ago, and then develop a strategy. So let me just jump into this because I've got a ton that I want to share with you. Visit this URL. It is completely free, and it is this entire presentation. And that's going to allow you to be able to follow along after the fact and be able to fill things out and check things off, but also to make sure that you're getting all of the information that I'm sharing. So leave this up for a second more, but feel free to cut and paste, put it into your, type it into your URL bar and download all of these slides. Okay, let's jump into this. All right, number one is we need to be deliberate with our business decisions. So no more accidental photographer, no more just crossing your fingers and hoping work comes your way. So first thing that you want to do in this time of strategy and analysis is take a look at where you are in your career and figure out where you want to be. It sounds super obvious to say that, but I don't think many of us take the time to do that, especially when you're so busy, you're just taking any work that comes your way, but not all work is good work if it's moving you in the wrong direction. To give you an idea from me, when I first started my business, the people that hired me to photograph were new parents. And so I was photographing babies. And so then I would photograph one baby and then they would have friends that had children. So I'd photograph those children and then their friends' children. And all of a sudden, when you went to my portfolio, guess what I had in there? Only pictures of babies and children. And guess what I really don't find inspiring? Photographing babies and children. And There are people who do it beautifully and fantastically, but that's not me. And so this is an opportunity to write this down for yourself. Where do I want to be and what do I want to be shooting? Things that pay you is one thing, but things that fulfill you is another, and hopefully you can make them be the same thing. Now, when I talk about being deliberate with your business, you need to be deliberate with the things you shoot, specifically also with the customers you attract, where you're spending your budget, and your pricing. Now, I'm going to talk a lot more about pricing later on because there's a lot to talk about here and a lot of considerations. I don't want it to not get enough attention. But budgeting. How often, besides just doing your taxes, do you take a look at where your money's going? There's this famous saying, something to the effect of the person who doesn't know where their last dollar went doesn't know where their next dollar will come from. Let's see. Make this a little bit bigger for y'all. So for budgeting, figure out how much a year you're spending on gear, how much a year you're spending on outsourcing tasks. Also figure out what you're spending for training and education as well as marketing. Now, it is actually advised that you spend somewhere around 20% of your operating budget on marketing, advertising, promoting yourself. And most of us spend more of that money on gear. So maybe you need to reconsider that. So take a look and figure out where your money is going. And there are many, many guides that will take you through how you should be budgeting. Next question is, who is my customer? Where can I find that customer? And have I built a customer profile? So this is actually the first exercise in this section that I think you should spend some time on. So take a look here at the customer profile, okay? And let me just see. I think some people are saying the slides aren't full screen. It's showing up full screen at my end. Something like that. Maybe I'll just go maybe like this. Does that help a bit? Hopefully. Okay, so hopefully this helps a little bit. All right, so taking a look here. If you've never heard of a client profile before, again, you can download the URL I shared earlier, or you can take a picture of this screen. Now, the idea behind a client profile, sometimes called a client avatar, is that instead of just hypothetically envisioning what your potential client would be or who they could be, you actually need to envision them as a person. Give them a name, give them an age. Where do they work? Where do they shop? What kind of hobbies do they have? Where are they looking online? Favorite platforms? Hashtags that they're following. When they make purchasing decisions, when they do this, what are their decisions based upon? Is it based upon their desire maybe to capture memories of their children? Is it based on a desire to brand and market themselves? Is it based on a desire for helping them with their self-esteem or to mark a special time in their life? So when you fill out a client profile, the idea behind this is not just to be like, oh yeah, there's ladies that hire me to photograph them and I photograph their children. You have to be more specific. So you figure out, where are they shopping? Where are they shopping for themselves? Where are they shopping for their children? Because all of a sudden when you do this, you go, oh, now that I know where they're shopping, could I team up with that store? Or could I do some kind of competition or some sort of program with that website? Or could I find a way, if there's certain hashtags that they follow, to create images that I can appropriately hashtag? Or maybe there's an influencer. Maybe there's a specific mom guru that you could do photographs and portraits for that woman. And then when she posts those photographs, it helps reach your target audience. Like, you need to be really specific. Give them a name, give them an age, envision them. Pick an actual customer you already have, someone that you consider one of your best customers or ideal customers, someone you'd like to hire you again, and build that customer profile. I think if you spend the time doing this, it'll make all the difference because it helps you figure out how to reach those people. Now, this takes me to more how I'm thinking, right? So It's a little bit easier sometimes when you're thinking of your customer avatar if you're a portrait photographer. But when you're maybe a commercial photographer, or you're shooting fashion and beauty, or shooting architecture, you do have to realize that a customer avatar is relevant because you're still trying to reach an individual. There's still somebody making a decision to hire you as a photographer. However, you also want to just think about the client in a bigger picture in general, like the actual companies that you want to hire you. So who are your dream clients and how can you reach them? What I do is every single January, every year, I sit down and I'll spend pretty much a full day on this task. I sit down and I make a list of 50 dream clients. And so these might be, maybe it's Makeup Forever and it's Sephora and it's all of these makeup clients that would like to hire me. And I go through and I make a list. And out of these 50, what I do is I kind of divide it into a couple sections. One section of these dream clients I go through is I say, what dream clients are the pie in the sky? They seem really, really far in the distance that I'd actually get them to hire me, but I want to start working on them now. Now, there's this thought process that in the past, it used to take 7 or 8 different touch points with a potential client to get them to hire you. Meaning it took maybe 7 or 8 times for you to interact with somebody, whether it was a mailer or a phone call or an email, to get them to register you and then reach out to you or hire you. It's now considered to be more like 27. I'm not kidding. Like 27 touch points, times you need to interact with people. And so these dream clients, the ones you think you'll never get, well, if you start now, in 5 years, 3 years, maybe you've had those 27 touch points. Maybe you've made a good impression. And so I've actually had a client hire me earlier this year that it was a producer. She had worked at a totally different company 5 years ago. She had heard of me then, but she wasn't producing for fashion and beauty, but she came across my work, and it wasn't until she switched jobs that she's like, oh, I remember that photographer, Lindsay Adler. Now is actually a good time to hire her. So you have to have that long tail marketing strategy. Like, know that it's going to take time, especially for those dream clients. And so again, my list of 50, maybe about half of them are going to be the pie in the sky. But then the other half, I want really attainable clients that could use my help now, or that I think that are a little bit more realistic. And that just, it's going to depend on, the type of business you're in, the type of industry, what that means. So everybody else is going to have to analyze this as well. Let me see if I can get that to stop flickering, because I think I see that this is, I'm just going to do it like this. Let's see. Let me read this up. Better. Ooh, maybe not better. Trying to get this to work better for you guys. Let's see. Okay. Some people say that the slides are flickering, but it's looking pretty good on my end. All right, so let me continue on. Okay. Let's see. Next up, we want to talk about being creatively deliberate. All right, let me just give this a second. I want to see what my slides are looking like for all of you guys. Okay, give me one sec. I'm just going to make sure this is coming up for all of you guys. Okay, I think it looks good on my end. All right, so let's continue on. Great. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about being creatively deliberate. So first we start about being business deliberate, about your pricing, about your customer avatar, or about the customers you're trying to reach, about your budgeting. But then people also forget that your creative process is super important. You want to actually move in a direction that will help you be photographing the things you enjoy, the things that you actually want to be photographing. So what this starts off with is that you need to shoot the type of things you'd like to be hired for. Now, some people are photographing exactly what they want and the exact clients they dream of, but others have an ideal client in your head. When I think about this, I'm thinking about back to when I was photographing babies. And I was glad to have the money. I was glad to have that grow my business. But at the same time, what I really wanted to be shooting was creative high school senior portraits. I wanted to do them with a fashion twist. But because I didn't have any high school senior portraits in my portfolio, of course no one's going to hire me for it. It makes sense. People only want to hire you for what they actually see. And so what you need to do is you need to set aside time once you've drawn out your ideal client list, your client avatar, is you need to shoot work that represents that client stylistically, also in the subject matter. And also keep in mind the amount that you want to be charging for those photo shoots. Do the images look like they're representing that amount of money? So as you can see here, these images were not deliberate for me. This was just what was coming my way. But here's how I have changed and evolved. One of the most important things I can impart to you about being able to eventually shoot the type of work you want to be hired for and get paid to do that work is that you give yourself creative play days. Every single month, every single month, when we're not quarantined and not able to shoot, but every single month, I take at least 2 days that I treat as creative play days. I am not getting paid a dime for these shoots. In fact, these shoots often cost me money. But on these creative play days, what I do is I'm envisioning my dream client, I'm envisioning the type of work I want to be hired for, and I am shooting those types of images. So I'm building my portfolio to represent that. And so it might be, for me personally, maybe I'm shooting some beauty images that appeal to a specific beauty brand that I would like to hire me. Or maybe I'm experimenting, trying a new creative technique, because what happens if a client hires me in the future and I want to be able to pull from a broader lighting knowledge, whatever it may be. My point is, on those creative shoot days, I treat them as an essential part of my marketing because those images are marketing me, showing my skill set. I want to show you what I'm talking about, but you have to remember this. I'm shooting for free. I'm not getting paid. But it's not people reaching out to me and saying, hey, will you shoot me for free? It's me being strategic. I know a target client that I want. I know the type of imagery I need to create to attract that client. I'm going to set up a shoot and the images are for me. Now, that doesn't mean during the shoot I might not create, I might create another image geared specifically towards what that individual wants for their portfolio or whatever it may be, but it's fundamentally for me. I don't shoot for free unless it's helping me build my portfolio, make an insanely good connection, or somehow moving me forward into the future. There's not this whole exposure thing. It's not like that. It has to be more strategic. Exposure is kind of like someone saying like, hey, we know we're important. You're not so important. So like work for us for free. And then maybe you'll get something out of it because you're further down the totem pole. Like that's how I read it. So I'm very strategic when I create for free. So take a look at this. Picture on the left is a shoot that I did where I didn't get paid, but no one asked me to do this. All I did in this instance was set up a shoot day where I was trying new lighting. I was trying to play with color and gels. And the picture on the right was an album cover, an album promo shoot that I did for a rock pop singer. And she looked at my portfolio and she said, this color is my brand color. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And so she hired me to produce something similar for her. Now, do you see how people they're not, like a lot of time our clients, they aren't coming up with the ideas they want. They want to see it. This girl said, I want that color on my face. You can do it. I want to hire you. So that's why having the type of work you want to be hired for is super important. Another example, picture on the left was a creative editorial day. It was in a magazine. Let me bring this back out. Let me go back one slide real quick. Let's try it again. Make sure you all can see this. So this is the sample. I'm just leave it up for a second. Okay. Now it's caught up. Okay, so I put back up on the screen the images I was talking about. The picture on the left was the color swath across the subject's face, and then the picture on the right was the actual commercial shoot that I did. All right, so now, okay, that's good. All right, so this is the commercial shoot So this is a fashion editorial that I did, or a beauty editorial. So the picture on the left was an unpaid shoot day. I reached out to a model. I reached out to hair and makeup. We did a play day. I made these beautiful pink images. Like they don't necessarily have any commercial applicability. However, Haagen-Dazs, specifically Haagen-Dazs Shanghai, reached out, and they loved that, and they decided to hire me to shoot a campaign for them for mooncakes for the Chinese New Year. And just to give you an idea, and this is not meant to be like, okay, look at, this money, it's not that again. But the picture on the left, I don't know, probably cost me, a couple $100 to produce when it was all said and done. The picture on the right, the model alone made $20,000 for the licensing for that ad campaign, just the model. So you should the type of work you want to be hired for, and people are very literal. They want to see that exact look, feel, and style. This also, though, is true with portraiture, since most of what I've been showing you to this point has been all about fashion, commercial, and beauty work. Let's talk about portraits. Picture on the left is a couple. This is actually where I started, and I want to show you. The picture could be worse, but it's definitely struggling with lighting and posing and styling. And so what I started to do is when I'd photograph couples, I would try to advise them on styling and shoot at a beautiful time of day and beautiful location with beautiful clothing. Because then when someone would say, oh, wow, I love that image, will you create something like that for me? I could tell them how important styling was. Let me see. I'm not exactly sure why. Let's see this. Let me bring it back up. I'm putting the pink shots back up because I'm not sure. Like it's playing on my side, but I'll make sure you guys can see it. Leave it up for just a second. Make sure we catch up here. Give me a second. Okay. Okay, it should be fixed now. All right, cool. So I think you guys can see this now. So I think, is it stopping? Let's make sure it's not blinking. Okay, cool. Perfect. This is what I was talking about with the pink slide. Okay, cool. Great. So now we can move on. All right, moving on. Okay, so now this is an example of the portrait I was talking about. So when somebody wants to hire me to create a beautiful stylized image, I want them to be able to point to the images that they're inspired by, specifically the ones that I have created, and be able to tell them what's required in order to make that artwork. Okay. Let me give it a moment. Perfect. All right. Continuing on. This is an example of the type of change that I've experienced in my career. And it's a type of change that I've experienced in my career over a 15, 16-year time frame. I started off photographing families and babies, and now I photograph fashion editorials and campaigns. So my point is, it started off on accident. And then when I realized the type of imagery that I was attracted to, instead of just making pretty photos for the sake of it, which is also totally fine for creative purposes, I took a moment to really analyze, who do I want to hire me? What type of imagery are they looking for? How can I attract their attention? And set up 2 shoot days per month to create the imagery that would attract them. So what I find is that when you are shooting, especially when you finally get busy with paid work, you get distracted or you get focused only on that paid work, which of course you should. But then if it's not what you find creatively rewarding, eventually you just get stuck there. So just a couple people for talking on the chat room. Because we are in the quarantine shelter in place, I'm actually out in the countryside. So back at my home studio, I have a intense webinar setup, but I am surrounded by farmland on all sides. So thank you for those of you who are being patient as, there's a couple issues, but normally, when I'm in New York City, we have a little bit better infrastructure there, but I'm sheltering in place outside in the country. Okay, so let's continue onward. Next up, what we want to discuss now is the importance of finding your style. So first and foremost, we talked about being deliberate with your business decisions, your budgeting, and your customers. But then you need to be deliberate with your creative decisions. What type of imagery do you want to create and get hired for? But as we do this, of course, we need to talk about style. Now, style is something that I personally found quite overwhelming in the beginning. So in the very beginning, I didn't know what was good in photography, and I didn't know what attracted me. So instead, fundamentally, what I would do is I would shoot a little bit of everything. And the idea was I wanted to cast a wide net, try to shoot as much as possible, and hope that as many people would see my work and say, yeah, she could probably do XYZ effect. But I found out later on in life that this is not the way to go. Instead, it is far more valuable to be able to have a style. And I'm going to just see if I can get rid of this flickering, because there shouldn't be a flickering at all. Very strange. Okay, let's try that again. Okay. Okay, let me try one more time. Let me just move this around. Let's do, I'm going to add a different view here. And let's just do this. Let's see if this is better. Okay, so give me a second to make sure that this catches up with me so I can make sure you're seeing what I'm seeing. I'm waiting for it to catch up. Okay, so let's continue to talk a little bit about style, though, while I wait for this. So style is one of those things that's somewhat hard to define. But when you look at a photographer and you see their work, see, it's cropped. Let's try. I'm going to delete that. All right, we're going to go with this. I don't know why it's blinking. Let's try this again. Okay. I'm not sure. Let's see. Why is it blinking? Ideally, though, guys, if you go to that initial URL, I'll put up real quick. If the slides are blinking, you can follow along with that. And your initial URL is right here. I'm just going to leave it up for a moment. Okay. All right, so let me do this one more time. I'm going to try this again. Okay. Going back to where we were. Okay, so let's talk about style. What is... One moment. I'm going to just make sure this stops blinking because I know it's probably pretty annoying. One sec. Let me work on... All right, I'm just going to delete this real quick and add it again. Okay. Let's see this. Still blinking. I am mildly at a loss because I do not want to irritate everybody with this blinking, but let's see if I can do. Let me try one more thing. Let's do. I'm going to try to play the whole screen. And let's try making that fit. We'll see if this helps a little bit more. Okay, let's try this. Let's give it a try. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about style. Fundamentally, what style is when you look at a photographer's work, there's common threads that weave throughout their entire body work. So what that means is there are some elements that no matter what they're photographing, whether they're photographing a man, a woman, a commercial shoot, whatever it is, those common elements, they are continuous. And so when you look at your favorite photographer and you know that photo, they must have taken it. You know that that's their work. It's that. And so it's that weird, somewhat intangible, hard to describe, but I've tried to put it together in words. And I'm going to task you with analyzing your own work, because having a style becomes absolutely essential from going from a good photographer to a great photographer to being able to stand out. What ends up happening is, I've shown you already in the previous examples here, that people don't want things that are close. Like, they want to be able to see, yes, that is exactly what I'm looking for. And there are a lot of people that can take decent portraits. There are a lot of people that can take decent headshots. There are a lot of people that can take decent family portraits. And so in order to stand out, you end up having to compete based on price or a lot of marketing materials or your connections. And those are all completely valid, but it's also important to try to stand out in some other ways. And one of those ways is to be able to have a style and a vision unique to you. Because then if they want that style and they want that vision, you're the only person they can go to. And this is one of the reasons that I've been able to charge more and develop my career, is because I have a unique style. If people want that look, there's some people that can do a similar style, but if they want it to be authentic, they're going to hire me. So let's take a look at what this means. Your style and really your brand is divided into two parts: your emotional brand and your physical brand. Now, the emotional brand is about you, your vision, your style, what you photograph. And the physical brand is much more of things like your logo and your color palette and all of that. But style itself is the part I want to spend time talking about. What style is it's a recognizable or consistent visual theme throughout someone's work. Now, typically it's 3 to 5 words. Usually there's one for subject matter. So usually that means, I photograph babies, I photograph fashion, I photograph sports. The next element is visual. So it means it's colorful, it's low key, it's any sort of, it's painterly. It's any of those words describe visual elements of the style. And then the last part is an emotional element. How does a style make you feel? Is the image, are the images and the collection of the photographer's work very upbeat, youthful, joyful, fun? Is it dark, mysterious? There's no right or wrong style, but everyone has a different interpretation. So I would like to show you some examples of style. And so you can see how these photographers are purposefully employing style throughout their work. And then I'm going to give you an exercise to be able to do it yourself. So Brooke is one of my very good friends, and I asked her to describe her style. Tell me what the common subject matter is. Tell me what the common emotional elements and the visual elements are. So Brooke is a fine art photographer, and a lot of her work is self-portraiture, but she does photograph other subjects as well. Emotionally, the work is very whimsical. There's always something surreal or not related to reality, which is what I love. Next, on a more visual element, it is very painterly. The color palette is painterly. The way that she approaches her compositions are painterly. And then lastly, the word dark is both emotional as well as applying to the actual visual elements, because her work is often a little bit creepy, a little bit dark, a little bit mysterious, but then her images are frequently dark in the overall tonalities as well. So when she shoots just innately, she does at least, with these stylistic elements in mind. Many of us, it won't be innate. Many of it's going to have to be purposeful, which is what I'm going to talk about as we strategize later on. So I'm going to give you some guides for this. So next up, or taking a look here at her work, you see how these 3 images, they're all different, but they're all clearly taken by someone who has a unique lens through which they see the world, right? Like if you want this look and feel, there are other people that can do a look and feel like this, but if you want it, if you really want this and are attracted to this visual, you hire Brooke. And now Brooke is a fine art photographer, so she sells prints because people want her unique perspective on the world and see her as a fine artist. But she's also shot many book covers and album covers because people are attracted to the way, this unique and somewhat bizarre and amazing and beautiful way that she sees the world. Now, another example is my lovely significant other, Chris Knight. He has a very unique style that when you see it, you instantly know it's one of his photographs. And again, remember what we're talking about. We're talking about subject matter, emotion, and visual elements. So his subject matter is portraiture. He photographs men, women. So it's portraits of people. The visual element is it's very dramatic and painterly. The lighting's dramatic, the styling's dramatic, the emotions on the subject's dramatic, right? But the painterly element is he's often inspired by paintings. That's where he looks to for inspiration in the compositions, as well as the styling, as well as the background, as well as the color choices. And then the emotion, I mean, it's dramatic is one of the emotions, but also it's very timeless. Like it's a sense of not knowing if the picture's from now or from the past. And again, when you see his work, it all has that common thread throughout. Now, all of the photographs that I'm showing here were lit completely differently. I have seen some of the behind the scenes. I know that there are different modifiers, different numbers of lights, but it all is clearly shot by someone who sees the world in just a really unique way. And so if somebody wants that style and wants that vision, they hire this photographer. Recently, I assisted him on a shoot where it was a commercial shoot for one of the TV networks. And it's because he had an image, they said that fits perfect for the lead key art that we want for this TV show. Like people want to see the style and vision that they want for whatever, whether it's a portrait or commercial work. And then there's me as an example. My style is clean, bold, and graphic. It's fashion and beauty photography, but the emotional element I would say is bold. It's very strong. It's very. I like to do things that are both elegant but demand attention. And so if you take a look at my work, again, color palettes, it's all different colors, but it's clean, bold, and graphic. It's clearly by someone who sees the world in a particular way. But of course, many of you don't do fashion, and I've shown you fine art, and I've shown you some more creative portraiture, and I've shown you fashion, but this still applies to portraiture. I mean, for example, this is how I create a portrait of a ballet dancer. She is a ballerina for the Seattle Ballet. And this is a maternity session that I did for, she's a booker, an agent for a modeling agency. And she actually owns the modeling agency. And so if somebody wanted a maternity session that looks like this, they'd have to hire me. There's a million other ways to photograph maternity, but this is my unique vision. Now, let's look also at, let me show you a family portrait as well. Now, taking a look at this was a Game of Thrones inspired family portrait. And by the way, I worked with them in order to develop this concept. So this was not something that I said like, hey, I want to do Game of Thrones. You guys do it. It was interviewing them, asking about them about their personalities and all of that sort of thing. So here's your assignment. Your assignment is this. Envision the type of work you want to be hired for, right? The type of things you'd like to be shooting. And envision the type of imagery you'd like to be creating. Now go ahead and take a look at your work. And looking at your portfolio, select 3 images that if right now you had to show everybody, like everybody on this webinar, or you had to put up a website and there's only 3 images on that entire site, what 3 images would those be? And this shouldn't just be work that like got a lot of likes online. It should be work that really speaks to you, work that you've created. And as you look at these images, what do they have in common? Is there common subject matter? Common color palettes? Is there common emotional element? Other visual elements? And when these images speak to you and you find their common elements, you may find what's beginning to speak to you for your own individual style. And then once you figure out your style, you start shooting more of that. You shoot more of that style, keeping in mind your dream clients. How can you employ that style to create imagery that would appeal to those people? And when you do those 2 shoots a month, where you're creating imagery just to speak to those dream clients or just to create and build your portfolio, all of a sudden it starts moving you creatively in the right direction. And once you shoot enough over and over again, keeping the style in mind, you begin to build a body of work that has cohesion to it. So that's the effort that it takes. Now, I would love everybody to try to take a moment at some point during this time and look at your work. What are those 3 images? Maybe choose 5. Look at them and see what they have in common and see what you can do to start to develop a style. Then, when we're back to shooting, once you've identified these common elements, begin to put that style into practice and shoot it regularly. All right, so now that we've talked about being purposeful with your business and being purposeful creatively and developing a style, and now we are going to take time to talk about valuing yourself. You have to value your work, your time, your skill set. I remember this happened to me after I got out of college. So I actually did go to college for photography. When I was in college, I went to Syracuse University, and it was expensive. It happens. And I valued it, but I got out and I did a senior portrait, and I did the entire session. The mom loved the pictures. Like, she loved them so much that she cried. And then she didn't order the pictures right after the session. Instead, she came back to me later. And she said, unfortunately, we don't want to pay what your rates are. We don't think that those rates are appropriate. Here's what we're offering you. And she offered me, first of all, my rates were completely fair, but she offered to pay me less than half for more than twice the deliverables. She was just taking me for every penny. And it was really hard then because I just started, I was just getting out of college, and I knew that I wasn't one of these established professionals. But when I took the photographs, she had cried. She had loved them so much that she cried. So it wasn't a matter of me not having the value. It's a matter of what the photographs would mean to her, and also how she respected me or didn't respect me. She didn't want to pay what my prices were. And I'm just telling you, everyone goes through that, and everyone has to deal with that. However, if you just give in to everybody and you just say, yeah, you're right, I'll take whatever money you're willing, people will step all over you forever, and you'll never be able to grow and treat this like a business. And this is why, first of all, if you don't have an investment guide, you really need to. An investment guide is your price sheet, but it explains your value proposition, what you have unique to offer, and it sets out your prices in a very professional way. And that allows people to be able to understand what they're paying for more than you just clicking the camera. Because nowadays people think, well, of course, I can literally just take a picture with my iPhone, but that's not what they're paying for. So let's take a look. I just mentioned value proposition, and it means the unique or innovative service intended to make a product attractive to customers. What is it that makes you different? What value are you providing to them? And one of the things you're encouraged to do with marketing is figure out what problem you're solving for your customers. Which, if you're taking baby pictures, it might be like, well, I'm not solving a problem. They could take pictures of their iPhone. I'm just taking pictures of their baby. But that's not, you are solving the problem of capturing a moment that is fleeting, because that baby's going to grow quickly, time's going to pass, and you're creating beautiful works of art for them that captures that moment that'll be gone before they know it. So some of the things you need to ask yourself as you're trying to plan and communicate to people, as I'm sure you'll run into people that want to push back, you need to figure out what problem you're solving for them, what benefits they're reaping from hiring you, what makes you different, that's your differentiation. Why should they hire you over someone else? So in other words, why you? If you can't answer that question, then of course people are going to push back, and of course you're going to struggle with actually getting people to choose you as their photographer. So to give you an idea of some people's value propositions, what unique do I have to offer? It depends on what your business structure is as a photographer, but it could be, we capture your family's most precious moments. Look and feel like a model for your senior portrait. Your brand is important. We help you to craft visuals to grow your brand. Exquisite photography, compelling videos, all the visuals you need, we've got you covered in one place. So each one of these things is addressing a different problem that someone that needs to hire a photographer would have. Maybe it's a high school senior that wants to look and feel beautiful and like a young adult for their portrait session. Maybe it's somebody that started a business and they need personal branding images. Or maybe it's somebody who works for a company and they need photo and motion, so stills and video for their event. You're solving a problem for them. You're helping them. Now, I want to go back to talking about that investment guide. For the investment guide, instead of just offering someone a price sheet, typically you want to call it an investment guide because you want them to understand that they're investing in imagery. And so you can do this in a lot of different places. You can actually make an investment guide for free using a website called Canva, Canva. It is completely free, and it is the website that allows you to create marketing materials. You can make marketing materials for social media, but you can also do magazines and pamphlets, and it's a really nice drag and drop guide. Now, of course, you don't have to just go with them. You can actually buy marketing templates, but here's an example of what you could create. So what I have in my investment guides, which you see right here, is that I start off with a biography about myself and then a message from me. I explain, really, it's my artist statement. Like, why am I a photographer? What do I value in it? And it's my way of showing what I value and what I have unique to offer. So I put part of my value proposition right in that, in my message about me and who I am. Then when you flip into the investment guide, we actually start to talk about what a session looks like. So when you hire me, we develop a concept. This is how my shoots work. And it doesn't mean this is what your setup needs to be. But when you hire me, we talk about your goals. Why are you hiring me for this photo session? What are you trying to achieve? We talk about mood boards, so the inspiration boards for the shoot. We discuss wardrobe, hair and makeup, color palette. And then I walk people through what a shoot day looks like, how long they can expect the shoot to be, who will be on the shoot, how are they going to look at the images after the shoot, how are the images going to be delivered, all of that stuff. So I build this all up before we get to the prices so they understand why that price exists. And so it's not a matter of it being, well, how cheap can I get this person? Oh, I understand now what went into this photo shoot, and now I understand what those prices mean. Remember, as I said before, exposure means you should shoot for free because we are important, but we don't think you are. Just know that if somebody wants a discount once, they're pretty much always going to want a discount. And if they don't pay you the first time, they're not going to pay you in the future. It's just human nature and how these things work, unfortunately. So that, of course, takes us to the question, the question really is, what the heck do I charge? Now, there are several photographers that talk about this more in depth and helping people figure out their price points. But I think one thing that's important to realize is how much you actually need to make to stay in business as a photographer. This is why so many people go out of business by the second year, because they're not really looking at what they're spending, like we discussed in the beginning with the budget, and they're not really understanding how often they need to shoot and how much they need to charge for those shoots just to break even. So there is a really important resource that I recommend that you check out. This resource is the nppa.org calculator. So when you take a look at this, if you go in there, you're going to be really surprised by the number of what you need to be making to break even. So here's what it looks like. This is a completely free resource. Everyone, during your free time now, during your strategy sessions, you need to fill this out. And so some of the things it's going to ask you are, how much do you spend on office supplies and studio? How much do you spend per year on your photo gear? How about computers, web hosting, education for yourself, maybe professional dues if you belong to a professional photo organization? How much do you pay for health insurance, your taxes, your utilities, your insurance for your equipment, shipping, your vehicle, literally everything. And then in it will also ask, how much do you need to make to survive? Your desired annual salary. And that's what you see over on the right-hand side. And then how many days are you aiming or are you actually working per year? And so in these numbers that I threw out here, it's saying that the way that I calculated this, just to break even, I need to make about $1,800 a week. And if I'm only shooting twice a week, then each one of those jobs, I got to be making like $900. And that is to break even as well as to pay myself my minimum required salary to survive. So these numbers aren't fun, but they will become invaluable because you understand how much you really need to be pulling in instead of crossing your fingers and then just hoping that in the end you come out ahead. Okay, so this last part is I keep talking about strategy. Over and over and over again, I mention strategy. And this I mentioned as well. You got to figure out where your money came from to know where it's going to come from in the future and what you're spending it on. One of the problems that people have is they start off in the new year with some New Year's resolutions, and then the year goes away. It slips by. So as you plan your business goals and strategies, I recommend that you divide the year into quarters. So when I am planning out what I need to achieve, so a certain number of marketing shooting days, some marketing planning days, promo material, like the days I'm setting aside those number of days per quarter, and I check back in at the beginning of every quarter to see if I met my goals and if I set aside the amount of time to actually grow my business that I told myself I should. Quarters make it more manageable. A year, it's gone before you know it. 6 months, too long to catch up. So aim for quarterly or monthly if you want. Now, your strategy. Your strategy isn't just about business. It's portfolio building, but it's also brand partnership and social media. So I want to talk about this just a little bit. Portfolio building, we've already talked about in depth. But brand partnerships, one of the things I encourage you to do is after you build that customer avatar that we had in the beginning, so you built your customer profile and you take a look at it, analyze it, and figure out what other companies share that same client. So what other places are they shopping? What other people are advertising to the exact same person? Find ways to team up with those people, because if you team up with them, instead now you're going to be combining your marketing efforts and marketing materials, and they may already have that audience gathered. They may already have the email list. They may already have the social media channel. So by finding ways to partner with them, they've already done a lot of the hard work and you're just stepping in. And I mean, you of course have to offer value, but you're stepping in and taking advantage of the fact that they've worked so hard to draw that audience in already. So if you're a wedding photographer, that would be teaming up with a florist or a DJ or a boutique. If you're a high school senior photographer, maybe it's a school, or if you're a head chef photographer, it's a Better Business Bureau. Who are the gatekeepers, but also who already has drawn together those people, and can you partner up with them? And then the next thing I want to talk about is social media engagement. Social media is something that's important for me and my business. And it's not for everybody, but I feel like nowadays it's a really powerful tool, and it's a powerful tool that doesn't need to cost you a lot of money, but it certainly can cost a lot of time if you're not careful. And that's why strategy is important. So for example, just to give you an idea for Instagram, take a look and analyze hashtags. What hashtags would your target audience be looking at? Which hashtags are going to create similar content that you could actually attract someone's attention? There's a much longer discussion about content marketing. What that means is you create a piece of content that is valuable to your target audience. What is a blog post they'd like to read? What is a guide they'd like to download? What is some piece of information that they would find valuable? When you create that piece of information, you are a resource to them. You are helping them out. But then you become an expert, and you become someone that they go to in the future and then potentially hire you. Content marketing is really powerful, but it's something that would be way beyond the discussions of this webinar. So be sure to look it up. It's something that I use for my business all the time. And then cross promotions is also true with social media, right? That same thing. The brand partnerships, are there other people online that have your target audience? So to wrap this all up, I want to show you some of my strategies, some of the things that I've employed in the past that I have found that have worked, how it's worked for me, and just I want to give you an idea of how I've looked at this. So to give you an example, back in 2017, middle of the year, I set out my portfolio and I looked at it and I go, oh crap, my portfolio doesn't represent what I really want to be doing. I want to be a beauty photographer and I need to focus on this more. And I went and I got some portfolio critiques. I actually paid to go to a couple portfolio reviews by people at the top of the industry, not just photographers, but art directors and ad agencies and that kind of thing. And they gave me feedback on the type of imagery I needed to create. So my goal was to be hired by commercial beauty clients. And I decided this near the end of October 2017. So same thing for you. Figure out your goal. Who's your dream audience? And when is your goal to start being able to present imagery that they'd be interested in? So the client analysis. I took a look and I said, okay, so who would I need to be getting the attention of? Well, the beauty community, they're active on Instagram. There are certain hashtags they use. There's certain influencers they work with, particularly makeup artists. There's a lot of makeup artists that have really big presence online. And so those are going to be some of my best bets, as well as traditional physical marketing. The visual analysis. I noticed that nowadays in beauty, it tends to be a lot of high-key beauty imagery, especially with skincare, really glowy, high-key skin looks, minimal makeup. And a lot of my shots had really heavy makeup. So I looked at it and I said, okay, I feel like I have the technique, but I'm missing the imagery that would speak to that audience for what they're looking for specifically. So my strategy was to shoot a new beauty portfolio that would target skincare and makeup brands. I wrote down the makeup brands I was most interested in. I analyzed my work to see ways that I could create imagery to attract them. And then one of the most important parts of my strategy, the most successful, was my cross promotion and teaming up with other brands. So what I did is I'd find, let's say, Marc Jacobs. I want Marc Jacobs to hire me. So from there, I would try to figure out what makeup artists does Marc Jacobs hire as influencers and also hire to do their shows and their campaigns. And there are many different ways to look at this. You can look at this from Le Book, which is a resource to research these things on social media. There's many different resources to be able to figure out who's actually working with these brands. So I did my research and I figured out those individuals. And what I did is I put together mood boards and I said, hey, I'm looking to shoot. I love your work. Here's a potential shoot I love to do as a test shoot, one of those creative play days. And so what happened is I did probably about six to eight shoots with specifically targeting different makeup artists that were well connected. Then what happened is they would have their work, they'd put it on their social feed, as well as show people at the brands they worked for. And all of a sudden those brands were calling me because I got my work in front of the right people. It wasn't just about social media, it was about making the right connections. So these are the type of images that I created in some of those collaborations. What we would do is I would usually start with something clean and fresh that would appeal to the trends in the industry. And then I would go in and try to create something eye-catching that would really excite that particular artist, so then they would want to show their clients. So that just gives you an idea of my approach. Now, in the beginning, I had a slide there that I had the notes and the presentation here. So feel free, it's the lindsayadler.photo/strategy, just so that you have this to reference. So here is what you all should be aiming to do. You should ideally take this time and go through and start and think about everything I said in this presentation. So first and foremost, okay, do I really understand where my money is going? Do I understand who my client is? Have I built a customer avatar? Am I being purposeful and deliberate with my business decisions? And then secondly, take a look and say, am I where I want to be in my career creatively? Am I shooting the types of things I want to be hired for? And if not, let me figure out what that is. And specifically, what's my style? How can I shoot the types of things I want to be hired for? And have a unique vision or style as I shoot those things so that I become the go-to for that particular look and that I can differentiate myself. And then from there, take time to understand what it costs you to be in business. What does it actually cost you for the number of days you shoot? What does it cost you just to pay your bills? And then what are your income goals and how can you reach? How much do you need to be making per shoot to reach those income goals? And then from there, you put together an investment guide. So you put together the price sheet and you figure out what your pricing is, but show people your value proposition. What do you offer? Why do your shoots cost what they do? And what are they getting for that price in the end? And then lastly, figure out as you go forward into the future, what is your strategy? Where would you like to be shooting? What clients would you like to have? How much would you like to be making? And then start analyzing how you can do it. Can you team up with other brands? Maybe it's social media that's going to be the solution. Everybody's going to be different, but you have to take a look at how you can have the most influence and the best ability to reach those target clients. So with all of that, what I'll do is I'll take a couple questions real quick, but then I'm actually going to pop back on, and at 6 o'clock, I'm going to do an Ask Me Anything so that you guys can bring all of these questions. So I'll do 3 questions, and then back at 6 o'clock, I will be able to take more. Okay, so 6 o'clock, there is another link. If you go to my Instagram, you can also find that link. Let me just see if there's any questions so far. I'm just scrolling. And there's, of course, a delay. So that's why I'm waiting to see what kind of questions there are. And Junarad, hi, in Virginia. Yes, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when I will take a bunch of questions. And then I'm just, while I'm waiting for a couple questions to come in, somebody, Sky says, most people on social media barely respond to what is delivered on the photography world. I mean, and it's all about strategy, right? So one of the things that I found is a lot of my efforts have gone into reaching out to, at least in the commercial world, my clients in other ways. So it's email marketing and it's print promotions. But if they follow me on social media, if they're regularly seeing my work, at least they're thinking about me often. It's not that they necessarily discovered me on social or that they necessarily chose to hire me from social, but it's at least keeping me on the top of their mind. Night Razor said, do you recommend dual branding? And I feel like that may be if you're saying you shoot two different subject matters. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you mean. This is a tough one because whenever you have two different brands, let's say you have a boudoir brand and a wedding brand, if you have these two separate brands, it means that you have a lot of effort in creating content and marketing for those brands separately. But if you keep in mind that often, previous boudoir clients may become bridal clients, or bridal clients may be interested in boudoir. If you can find a way to get the two to be the same, it saves you a lot of time and effort. But if the audiences truly are different, sometimes it makes sense to actually split the brand. Gotcha. So Night Razor says, yeah, shooting MMA and portraiture. I mean, here's the thing. If you shoot MMA and portraiture, are some of your portrait clients going to be people that are athletes or in the fitness realm? And so maybe you narrow, instead of doing all portraiture, you narrow it down so it's much more specific, and you're targeting people that want maybe a little bit more aggressive or dramatic styling. And so the people in the MMA world might be looking, oh, they also do portraiture. Oh, it's a style that appeals to me. So I think you could merge them, unless you're photographing babies. And then you don't photograph babies like that, so you switch it out. Let's see. Thank you, Mark, for the lovely interior. We got a fireplace back here. It's my boyfriend's house. It's really cute. Duncan Brennan says, at what point would you say social media strategy is not in your best interests? There are going to be some instances where you decide that your target audience and who you're trying to reach, they're not overly active on social. And maybe it's because it's certain businesses, or maybe it's certain types of photography. And you find that in-person networking is what's gotten you the most business, and you're spending too much time on social and you want to spend more time on in-person networking. I think it all depends on what you think is most successful for you. I find that it is a mix of everything for me, because it's that 27 touch points. It's in-person marketing, it's my social media marketing, it's my email marketing, it's my direct promotions, it's all of those things. So it seems like a lot, but even if you just dedicate a couple days per month, let's say you say, out of an entire 30 or 31 days in a month, I'm going to do 4 marketing days. And one day is going to be emails, and one day is going to be physical, and one day is going to be in person, and right? Then it's not so intimidating. And then it's only 4 days per month, or 3 days per month if you want to cut it down. But everyone's going to be different. Someone said, Patty says that she wanted to know tips for being a pet photographer. I mean, there are definitely fantastic and successful pet photographers out there. If you check out Dog Breath Photography, she is a spunky, very talented photographer who is very, very successful in social media. She actually has a social media class that she's taught, and she does pet photography. She even was able to have such a reach that she had a Nat Geo show. But one of the things that's important to notice is that her success is in part personality and connecting with other people, but also she has a unique style. It is a very fun, playful, vibrant style that also matches her personality. But that's what's helped her succeed. It wasn't just social or any one element. It was that unique vision that she had. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this presentation by putting up the link to the slides one more time. But again, I invite everybody to join me at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with as many questions as you want. And it's also fine to make them specific to you. So in the example of the pet photographer, if you have a specific example and you'd like me to take a look or give you some ideas, bring them that way. I'm happy to help. They can be about business strategy, but they can also be about technique. So I will see you guys there, and let me real quick end with just putting this slide up one more time. Thanks everybody. See you then.